I took a leap of faith to become an English teacher when I was 22 years old. If you take a leap of faith, it means you do something that isn't easy. You do something even though you know you might not succeed. So it's probably one of the hardest things I will ever have to do in my life, because I wasn't only starting a new career, but I was leaving my family, I was leaving my home, I was also leaving the country I was brought up in. So this is the story of how I became an English teacher. Before I became an English teacher, I was studying geography at university. I really enjoyed studying geography, but I couldn't imagine myself working in that field. Now you might say to yourself, something doesn't add up here. He said he studied geography, but now he's an English teacher. If you say something doesn't add up, it's an informal spoken English expression, which means something doesn't make sense. But I agree with you. But whilst I was at university, I made friends with lots of people from different countries, and I discovered I had a passion for languages, in particular Spanish at that time. So I decided I wanted to move to Spain and learn Spanish for at least 1 year. But how was I going to make ends meet? To make ends meet means to survive financially. How was I going to have enough money to live abroad and learn Spanish? And that's when I decided to teach English in Spain. For the 2 months after finishing university, I did an online course to get a certificate as an English teacher, and I also applied for teaching positions in the south of Spain. It didn't go well. I was in a pickle. To be in a pickle means to be in a problematic situation. If I didn't have a job, I couldn't go to Spain. Then, one day, a school in Cadiz, in the south of Spain, got in contact with me. Bad news, they couldn't give me a job because I didn't have the right qualifications. Good news, I could do the qualification in their school and then they would help me find a job. I was over the moon. I was really happy and I was on my way to Spain. The qualification to become an English teacher is a 4-week intensive course run by Cambridge University. It involves doing observed lessons. This means a lot of people are watching you and after the lesson they give you feedback. This includes telling you what you did well, but also the things you did wrong. It was my first experience ever teaching, and before my first lesson, I was shaking like a leaf. If you shake like a leaf, it means you shake a lot. I was shaking like a leaf because I was really nervous. It was a really intense time, adapting to a new country, but also training to become a teacher. But I got through it. This means I survived. I got through it, and now I had passed my qualification. It was time just to find a job. I began emailing every school and applying for every teaching experience, but I kept getting rejected for all of the jobs. They told me that I was too young or I didn't have enough experience. They were looking for a teacher with at least 3 years experience for a job. So this was a difficult time. But eventually a school got in contact with me, a little school in a town called San Fernando near Cadiz in the south of Spain. And I was delighted. I went to the interview full of hope and optimism. I answered all of their questions to the best of my ability and I tried to put my best foot forward. This means I try to behave in the best way possible to make a good impression. And to be honest with you, I thought the interview went really well. They seemed really happy. But at the end of the interview, they told me that I was too young and I didn't have enough experience. I was a little bit put down. This means I felt a little bit disappointed, which is understandable, but I thanked them for giving me the opportunity and I went home. Anyway, a few days later, I received a phone call and this same school had decided to ring me back. And they told me if I was still interested in the job, they would be delighted to take me on as a new teacher. So I was a bit taken aback. I was surprised, taken aback, because they wanted to take me on as a teacher. If you take somebody on, it means to employ somebody, to give somebody a job. So here it was. I had my first job and it was time to get started teaching. I was really happy. And that's when my passion for teaching really began. And that's my story of how I became an English teacher. I hope that you've learned something new in this podcast, some new words, expressions, or even an idiom. If you learned something new, make sure you write it down. You can also try writing an example sentence to help you remember it. And why not, try and use it in your next English conversation. I hope you also gain something through my experience. It's very difficult to take a leap of faith. It's a stressful thing to do, but it can also be very exciting. One thing I can guarantee you is that you're going to learn a lot if you take a leap of faith, and that way you're going to improve. So next time you're thinking, shall I do it? Shall I not? What will happen? My advice to you is go and do it, because the world is your oyster when you try new things. This means anything can happen and you can have any success that you want. So this has been PAPI English, the podcast. PAPI English is practice and perfection in English. Thank you for listening to the show, and I'll speak to you guys in the next podcast.